Freeform Concept by Jaco.
Right.
So I would prefer, since no fretted bass player has defined the sound of a fretted instrument, I felt that there was room here to find something that might be unique. Okay,
Yeah.
the fretless bass, to me, in my ear, in my statement, I'm speaking for myself, is already defined, and I really,
Jaco.
I'm afraid. Well, yeah, and
Yeah.
I think that we bass players sort of go in a way of what is sort of easier to do sometimes, and this thing was done, this sound was presented, well, let me try to do these sounds.
Yeah.
And I'm sort of the mind that I would prefer to go in a place that people, that I haven't been able to do well in and work it out. You know,
Yeah.
it's like deny me this person's sound, deny me this person's amps, deny me this person's contribution to music. Now what am I going to come up with? So the fretless sound, I suppose, is the fact that I never liked basses that sometimes have like this sort of, you know, that fretted
yeah, right,
sound.
the fretted sound.
And I wanted to avoid that.
Yeah, because really you have to hear the sound that you want before you can execute it. Don't you agree? I mean,
Yeah, and it develops side by side. Sometimes
Yeah.
people have the ideas like, how do I develop a style? And often by developing a style is as simple as changing this cable for another one, or moving your amp, you know, off to the right a foot. And the reason is because any change is a motion, is towards something. So as a matter of change, I started to study music that was not bass oriented, more the sax, the Gary Burtons, the Sonny Rollins, the Pat Martinos.
the Pat Martinos, right?
And I would try to play where I would play stuff that wasn't fretted. And by doing this, hopefully it had more of a sweet legato-ish, a melodic element to it. And that was sort of with the fretless thing. Sometimes I would bend things where I could play instead of playing. I might, you know, this is a bit of an exaggeration, but
Great thing for a student, though, to maybe, you know, catch on, you know, get an idea for an exercise to practice, bending intervals on the bass.
it would be nice if they knew the notes first.
Yeah.
See what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
the technical end of music and the technical end of instrumentation has often been way overemphasized instead of what is a minor chord. So I often tell people, don't worry about the technique, don't worry about the hands, don't worry about the chops, because a lot of guys do
That'll
that
come.
sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I'll say, worry about minor, worry about major, worry
Yeah.
about inversions, worry about tonality.
Tonality. Well, and you'd mentioned, you know, we were talking earlier today, and one of the things that I wanted to you know, talk to you about, what impact have guitarists had on you? Guitarists really were kind of just soloing on fretted, obviously, instrument.
Correct.
You know, in combo, small group, Joe Pass, Charlie Christian, Wes Montgomery, you know, if we're going through the history of the guitar, the guitar has evolved as a solo instrument probably a little quicker than the bass. So how much have you listened to guitarists?
A great deal. Guitar is a meaningful instrument for a bass player to regard if they want to learn about soloing, because you have to look at what is the nature of that instrument, and the nature of my instrument is to play parts. That's the nature of what I do.
Yeah.
But what happens is if I want to stretch out, Tubby the tuba style, where I want to play the melody, bass players sort of, in general, again, I emphasize, is that we're limited. We really are not the most capable melodists and in the family of instruments. We're really not the most capable harmonists. We don't really deal with those things. You know, I'll play an F and the pianist will play a dense cluster of tonality on top.
Right.
My interest was what are the notes in those two chord sounds that he's making.
Yeah.
So the guitar players had, for me, because of the fact that they had to solo. As a guitarist, unless you're pretty much Elvis on acoustic,
Yeah.
you have to solo. You must play melody. And so I discovered that the guitarists in jazz, not even the blues, because that's fairly a common sound and it's kind of a doable thing, but the jazz guitarists always dealt in harmony and tonality. So the Joe Pass John Schofields, I transcribed him recently. He was an old buddy of mine.
So you
from the old...
you're still transcribing. You're an advocate of transcription.
Yes, because when I transcribe, there's 3 benefits to it. 1, I've used my ear.
Your ear, correct? Yeah.
2, I've seen the harmony, and it's in front of you, and you can see and understand what it is that they were sort of instinctually doing. Right. And the 3rd benefit is here. Yeah. Because I have to play these things. I have to find these lines on the instrument. So transcription, people often ask this sort of, it's kind of a sweet, slightly naive question, which is, what is the best thing to practice?
Right. Right. Yeah.
You know, and it's kind of an innocent question, because it seems that a lot of guys don't want to do the whole gamut of what it takes to be a good, musician. Right. If you want to know the best thing, you know the answer to this already, but I'll say it for the camera. The best thing any musician can do in regards to getting better is to transcribe a better player than yourself.
Exactly.
Exactly. You know this. Yeah. And there is a meaning in this. There's lines and harmonies that I've never thought of.
And put yourself on the bandstand with players that are better than you also.
Yes, if you can do that, and if they'll allow you while you're in that area, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So you can do well, like as a musician, you can do well dealing with, let's say, like-minded musicians seeking the same things you're seeking. Right. That's sort of a focus and an idea that I have always endeavored to do, as a younger musician. I would meet a guy and say, well, I don't know how to solo that well, and I'm just getting into jazz. And he'll say, well, I'm working on my comping, and I'm not very good at it. Well,
let's play together.
Let's play.
Right.
And when you're dealing with like-minded people, you will grow. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. I learned when I was in Berklee back in 1972, an interesting point in history happened. There was 2 enclaves of great musicians. In Boston, there was there was Mike Stern, there was Vinnie Colaiuta, there was Steve Smith, there was Neil Stubbenhaus, there was Abe Laboriel, there was Gary Burton was there, Pat Metheny was there.
Some players.
Gosh, there were some other, I mean, there's so many more. At the same time, down south around Miami, Jaco Pastorius was there, Pat Metheny was down there, Gil Goldstein was down there, Mark Egan was down there. Right. T. Lavitz, Danny Gottlieb was down there, my buddy Danny, our buddy Danny.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Hiram Bullock, I think, was down there too.
Hiram Bullock was there.
Yeah.
There were these 2 enclaves right at the same time in history, and I got lucky to stumble into one of them. Yeah. And what I discovered is that these guys were better than me, because all I wanted to do was, do Jack, Jack Bruce was the guy.
Right.
I went up to Boston. I said, I'll be a bass player like Jack. And these guys said, well, there's other things to listen to. So I looked up to these guys, and they turned me around into pursue, let's say, other musics.
Jeff, I think it's fair to say for this project, especially the concert part of this, I mean, you put together an all-star group. Dennis Chambers on drums, the great Pat Martino on guitar, Richard Drexler on piano. I mean, this is a great group. What do you like about each of their playing?
I like the fact that each of them does something that I don't do. And I like the fact that we're all in agreement in regards to, let's say, a time element in music. This is a brilliant day of music for me, and one of the elements about it that I want people to notice when they watch this is none of this was rehearsed. Right. And none of this was prepared. You want to do this, you want to do that, you want to do that, you want to do this. Hit the record button. And why that's so special is because you will see mistakes, and the mistakes to me are sort of a terror element with a lot of musicians.
Right, yeah.
If they make them, it freaks them out.
Right.
And I wanted sort of